Hi, everybody. Welcome. Actually, a very special edition. The return of WAJID HASSAN, our third time together, which means a lot because he has so much to say. And we've been planning this, and we just spent an hour, almost an hour, 45 minutes, just trying to unpack what we want to talk about. WAJID is the author, and we met. I don't even remember how we met, obviously online, but WAJID is the author of The Struggle for World Sanity. And it's funny, every time we meet and we do this, it's the third time I read this. So I read this again today, and I took copious notes, as I've done in the past. I got a whole stack of notes here from you, WAJID. And there's so much here, and it's funny, you read something and it's not, it's not the life story of Babe Ruth. It's something different and unique, and it's WAJID's journey through life, and in particular WAJID's experiences with Dr. George King, who we're going to talk a lot about. This yoga, this mystic, this wonderful, amazing human being who had so many of the right ideas for life. We're going to talk about it. So in the previous two sessions with WAJID, the first time we talked about, and this is part of his background, we talked about metaphysics and healing, and he's also, this is great. I mean, you're so diverse, being a computer techie person. Also, you did comedy and acting, of all things, coming from Pakistan to England. I'm doing your whole, and winding up in LA, so diverse and versatile. And then, of course, meeting Dr. George King and becoming a member of the Aetherius Society in 1977. And this, we're going to talk about some of the chapters in this, but also, huge congratulations to WAJID, because he was just made the official representative of the Aetherius Society in North Carolina, where WAJID is now. So for everybody out there, this is so important because it's life. And as I've learned, and I discovered reading it a third time that so much of what he talks about, I've lived some of this stuff, and to me it's like a wow. So that's oh, let me go back. He's climbed Mount Kilimanjaro. He's an actor. He's a teacher. And again, he's an author. So he's so diverse and so learned. And the honor of being the official representative couldn't come to a nicer, more amazing guy. And I am so glad we met. So you take it away, doing a little intro, and then we'll kind of jump into substantive things. Take it away, WAJID.
Well, again, it's just heartwarming to see you again, Calvin. I think we definitely have a special bond, special psychic, emotional, spiritual bond. We can relate on many levels, and yeah, like you were saying before we came on, you were talking about your experiences, and I could totally relate, and you could relate to my experiences, and then we discussed, well, what about Dr. George King and his experiences? And so, many people, especially a lot of listeners, will relate that there's, I think we've come to the conclusion that there is no such thing as coincidence. I think it seems that sometimes we have deja vus, we have certain experiences, which could have been foreseen. So maybe our life was laid out in a way for us to, again, gain experience, evolve, and then either we took that route or we diversified or we diverted from that path. It depends again on our own present action. So you know, Dr. George King was the founder president of the Aetherius Society. Now, I have never heard in my life, Calvin, of a Western master of yoga of his caliber. I mean, the fact that, you know, after the war, I mean, he was a conscientious objector, and then after the war, you know, during the war, he was he wasn't a coward. He was a very brave man. He was a section leader for the London Fire Brigade, going into burning buildings when the Nazis were bombing London and saving a lot of lives. But after the war, it really affected him, the suffering. And then he, again, like you and me and a lot of people, he recalled some aspects of his past and was driven to study yoga, starting with the physical aspects of yoga, hatha yoga, and then moving on to breathing and mantra yoga, and then the deeper aspects of yoga, Raja yoga, Nani yoga, Kundalini yoga, raising this mystical power. And he was practicing a yoga for up to 8 to 10 hours a day on top of his regular job, which was at that time a London cab driver. And he did that for 10 years. I have never come across any Western man who can honestly relate that he did that. So can you imagine the discipline? Can you imagine the loneliness of doing that, you know? And then he he got to a position where he could raise his consciousness. I mean, he could do things a lot of the yogi masters could do in India. He said he could levitate, he could project from his body, go to different dimensions. At that time, he was working with beings on higher realms to help cure certain malignant forms of cancer. He was into spiritual healing. And then, so he'd already reached a very high state of consciousness, high level of deep yogic consciousness. People refer to as cosmic consciousness or nirvana. And he could do that at will. And it was only then that he was contacted. So my theory is that he was only contacted when he could gain rapport, because he was at the same level as these higher beings, these higher cosmic masters. So it's not contacting your dead relative or somebody on a basic realm. He was contacted by the highest of the highest, you know, extraterrestrial beings living in this solar system on higher dimensions, advanced technically and spiritually. He was washing dishes in his apartment in May of 1954, and this voice outside of his head said, "Prepare yourself. You are to become the voice of interplanetary parliament." Now, I don't know about you or me. That would really perplex me. He knew nothing about UFOs, nothing about extraterrestrial life. And so for a week, he was asking friends and family, and he couldn't get an answer. So after a week, he locked himself in his apartment in London, decided to go into meditation, find out the answer. And as he went into meditation, another yogi master from the East walked through his locked door, materialized in front of him physically, where, you know, he walked, the floorboards creaked as he walked across the room and sat in a chair, and gave Dr. King instructions on the command and why he was chosen. And then he said he would receive a letter from a yoga school in London to do advanced yogic breathing exercises. And after that, the master bowed and then left and went through the locked door again. At that time, Dr. King did not reveal who this yogi master was, but it's been learned now that yogi master was actually Yogi Swami Sivananda, who was actually alive in India at that time. So Swami Sivananda actually projected from his body, materialized in front of Dr. King. I mean, these are experiences par excellence. I mean, who gets people, yogi masters appearing in their room out of the blue? I don't think many people do that. So sure enough, he got this letter from this school. He asked how they found out. They said, well, we just saw your name and address, so we sent you this invitation. And under the guidance of the instructor there, Sri Nandi, Dr. King again did these advanced yogic breathing exercises where finally he could raise the power to the point where he could read. He would raise the Kundalini up to a higher center, up to the heart center. Then he could read the mental impulses that were being beamed from millions of miles away. He would focus on that, and then in this deep somatic yogic trance, those would be translated through his larynx, and being an Englishman would come out in English. And for the first time ever, they were recorded on tape. And that was the beginning of his story. And since then, over 600 of these transmissions are actually recorded for prosperity in the media, and anybody anybody can investigate the Aetherius Society and listen to some of these transmissions, which again, to me, either this man was telling the truth or he was a liar. If he was a liar, he was still an extremely intelligent individual to have even showed these tremendous messages. But to me, based on, again, my own research and my own understanding of Dr. King for over 40 years, I don't think he was lying. I think he was a real deal. And that's why, again, I'm not here to force feed my ideology or Dr. King's ideology. I'm asking your listeners to use their intuition and do what most people do and do their own research, like I did.
Again, I'm going to say to folks out there, get this and read it. It's a couple hours. And I, like I said, I read it twice before, and we've been together over a year. And the third reading, I picked out some things that I wanted to bring up now. And the reason why I bring it up is because I think it's a powerful example. I define myself as a regular guy. I live in New Jersey, of all places, so I'm a regular guy. I'm kind of teasing about that. I'm a Jersey guy. I wear a Rutgers hat. I like to watch football, basketball, old movies. But in here, you heard a voice. Dr. George King had heard a voice. And on December 28th, 15 years ago, I woke up, I was telling you the story, I heard a voice. I was in a very bad way in my personal journey, work and everything else. And that morning, I awakened, and I heard this loud voice say, trust. And quite frankly, I've never been the same since that. So can you talk about, Dr. King? Well, you already said he heard that voice saying he was going to be in charge of interplanetary parliament. And you've heard voices too. Can you talk about that?
Well, the voice that he heard was outside of him, was from intelligences who are highly spiritually advanced. Most of us, I don't think, would have had that kind of experience. Kind of experience you and I have a basic, sometimes the intuition talking to us, or a guide, a spirit guide, or a relative talking to us. But this was beyond that.
Right.
This was like way. I can't compare my experiences to those of Dr. King, because I don't have that. I don't have that training like he did.
Correct.
And so people have to be very careful when somebody claims that they're in contact with such and such an entity or a hot advance. I would look at their resume and say, well, what kind of training have you had? And he could honestly say that he had this yogic training where he could, first of all, contemplate, and then go into deep meditation. And in deep meditation, if you look at the yogi aspect of deep meditation, the heart physically stops, the blood stops flowing. You're in a state of physical death.
Wow.
And he went into physical death 600 times by taking 600 of these transmissions. people don't realize that, but in cosmic consciousness, you actually physically die. The only thing that keeps you alive, they say, is a small band of warmth above the top of the head that stops the blood from it stops rigor mortis. So it's actually a conscious state of death that Dr. King would go into every time these transmissions. Now, on the basic level, we don't get that. I think earlier we were discussing how is it coincidence or is it God? Or put whatever you believe in a higher power or whatever. We're not here to discuss religious ideology, but the question is, could our life be mapped out before we came? And I believe that is true. And a lot of these things that unfold in our lives, and it's not just me and you, it's millions of people who have had these experiences. I can relate to a lot of people I've heard who've had these voices from their intuition or from a spirit guide. We do have spirit guides that watch over us. We do have people who have passed over that watch over us. This again comes to the fact that there is no such thing as death. There's only transition, energy change. So these things are possible. But again, coming back to Dr. King, having contact with these cosmic masters, their messages weren't just little words or little implications. These messages had worldwide implications, which I believe, if people study them, could change the course of world history.
We discussed this before we went on air. My take, and we'll talk about that. The last chapter, we'll get back to it, but the last chapter, glorious future lies ahead. But we discussed we got a very troubled world, and it shouldn't be troubled because as the title of this series is Conversation with Calvin, We the Species, we're just one species. We're all one. And the sooner we learn that and live it and practice it, we are one. We've got to be together. I believe that so strongly. I came out of the 60s, civil rights and a war in Vietnam and all these and all women's lib and all these good, wonderful things. And that was my foundation. I'm losing the train of thought is, and I discussed this with you too before we went on air. If a lot of us can plunge in to the teachings and the life of Dr. George King, we're better off because right?
Yeah, exactly. And let's face it, I mean, I wake up in fear and anxiety. A lot of people are. These are very uncertain times economically, with the wars that are very critical, that are looming, that could maybe lead us into maybe a nuclear holocaust. I hope not. But the thing is, the timing of these messages came in the early 50s, when again mankind rediscovered atomic energy and started exploding the atom and hydrogen bombs. And so the cosmic masters, the initial messages that came through were that we need to stop all this nuclear proliferation. And that was one of the main spearhead of Dr. King's initial journey was to raise mankind's awareness. I mean, scientists today, they still cannot believe that we're still alive, because I think America and Russia, they each exploded over 1,000 nuclear warheads.
Wow.
On the pretense of, these are peace weapons, where, the motive was pretty evil. And so the nuclear fallout should have killed all of us. And again, that's a great mystery. It's like, so I believe that when the cosmic beings contacted Dr. King, it was a kind of intervention on their behalf. Wow. Because they felt that these nuclear explosions were actually going to affect not only Earth but also the other planets in the solar system, which they were directly on a high. See, we can only register what happens on the physical level. They, with their instrumentations, they can register what can happen on the other 7 levels as well. And so there was deep concern. I believe that they absorbed with their machinery, with their UFOs. I believe that they absorbed a lot of this radiation and saved us. Now, in regards to Dr. King being contact, being a genuine contact, they talked about this nuclear explosion that occurred at a secret underground facility in the Ural Mountains in Russia in the early 1960s or late 50s. And they said the Russians were really concerned because it went out of control. And they said that if they hadn't intervened, they said up to 18 million people would have been killed from this atomic fallout. Now, Russia at that time totally denied that there was any explosion, and it was only until 1976 when a Russian scientist defected and he told the West that that explosion actually happened. So to me, that was one proof that that Dr. King was in contact, because they told him about the explosion before anybody in the West knew about it. Even in modern times, Chernobyl, Fukushima, spacecraft was seen over in Chernobyl. There was a cigar-shaped object that was pictured. Again, it hasn't been shown in the West, but I think it was shown in Russia on the media, and they said that this cigar-shaped object was beaming pink energies into the nuclear plant, again absorbing the radiation, which was out of control. And at Fukushima as well, a spacecraft UFOs were seen over the area. Again, Fukushima was totally out of control. They didn't know how to contain it. Yeah. And there was intervention from extraterrestrial beings. So to me, it shows that these beings care about us more than we care about ourselves. And that was the start of Dr. King's journey, just the initial start. And then, of course, other things occurred as well. And so we've always been helped. Right now, we have divine intervention by these higher beings. They are sending beams of energy to us. All we have to do is absorb it and send it out. It's the only solution. It's the only thing that has not been done on a mass scale. You talk about Ukraine and Russia. I mean, the West has sent billions of dollars, in murder weapons to Ukraine to murder more Russians, and the Russians, so the arm dealers are laughing all the way to the bank. If the people in the West had a spiritual aspect, a spiritual inclination, they would have just told their followers or the people to like if 1 million people got together and raised their hands and sent this real spiritual energy from the psychic senses in the palm of the hand, and that if like 1 million or a couple of million people did that, that war would fizzle out in 3 days. And all that billions of dollars could be spent on the homeless and helping the economies of each of these countries. But we're so primitive, we're so savage, we're so archaic that we don't even understand the simple spiritual laws.
Correct. And we don't. I've been saying for a few years we've been living in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
All these years, we just don't realize it. We have so much. This planet has given us so much. It has so much potential to enhance the lives and the spirituality. But we throw it all away. It's funny. I zoomed. I'm listening to you. I said to you before we went on air. It's my feeling that we need heavy duty intervention. I said that, and yes, the words of Dr. George King are everlasting and powerful. And if we saw those words, and if more of us, but those words are not out there. I said what we actually need is a flying saucer, them, THEM, to come down and land in Tiananmen Square in China, set us straight, and then land on Main Street in Moscow, and and on the White House lawn, just boom, 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 and set us straight, and that would be so helpful. In lieu of that, we have to go back, all of us, and talk more about Dr. George King and his words and his ideas, and uh and I get depressed every day, as we all do, and but it's funny. I interviewed this philosopher a couple last week, and we did another session. We were talking about, he's a young guy, 40 years old. He's got an IQ of 160. He just found out at 40 years old he's on the spectrum. But we get a kick out of each other. I'm old enough to be his grandfather. Yet we're on the same plane. We communicate. You and I do so well. We were talking about mankind, and this kind of dovetails to what you just said. We're talking about mankind and the three mistakes of mankind, as he understands it, is greed, power, money. That's a big failing of humankind. The second great failing is education. We don't do enough to educate and teach. Teaching begins day one of life, maybe even in the womb. Teaching the right things, love, and service to others, and good things. That's where it all begins. We don't do enough of that. And then the third big failure is finding the moral truth. We don't know what that is, and that's just right with what you just said, Wajid.
Yeah, I mean, it's an ideal thought that they will land and fix everything for us, but they can't, because that would be contravening the law of karma, because we have created those situations, not them. And so if they had the opportunity, they would land, but they're not allowed to land because we have to fix it. There was a transmission where one of the cosmic masters said, you're always asking us for a sign. How about you give us a sign? Why don't you give us a sign? In other words, if we land, are you going to point nuclear ballistic warheads at us? Or are you going to, or before we land, are you going to, start becoming, normal human beings and stop warring with each other, stop this murder and violence and all this rubbish that's going on right now? You talked about these subjects with your colleague. The cosmic, and Dr. King, they've said there's only one sin on this planet, only one, and that's ignorance. And we commit all these crimes based on ignorance. And so, you talk about the educational system. If you look at all these great yogi, these great cosmic beings who've come, people like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna, Patanjali, Lao Tse, they all came in different cultures, different times, but they all said the same thing. There's no difference between what Jesus said and what Buddha said and what Krishna said. It's all the same thing. It's basically following the basic spiritual laws. So instead of the educational system teaching economics and maths and all these other things, which most of us don't remember even after we graduate, but basically teaching the basic laws of, first of all, the law of karma, which is action, reaction, opposite, and equal. Or like the Master Jesus said, as you sow, shall you reap. You look at all these mass killings. If children were taught that you're responsible for every action and you're going to get the equal and opposite reaction, the second thing that has not been taught is the truth is the law of reincarnation, which has been hidden by mainstream churches, mainstream religion. It's been taken out using the one life to live in order to control the masses. Again, if the children were taught about reincarnation and that we are, by the law of karma, responsible for our actions. You look at this murder thing, you know, what they don't understand is, if you, what the one of the masters, the cosmic master Aetherius said, he said, if you murder somebody, and you will actually be murdered either in this life or the next life, in the same way that you murdered somebody. Again, not to teach you, but to punish, not to punish you, but to teach you that you don't do this. So we can't escape from the divine law. We may get a decent lawyer or get away with murder on the earth plane, but it still does not take us away. If you're selfish and rich, it's pretty much guaranteed, Dr. King said, that when you in your next life, you may come in abject poverty and starvation. Again, not to punish you, but to teach you that you don't do these things. The spiritual laws are basic, common logic. You know, what part of thou shalt not kill don't we understand? You know, or love thy neighbor as thyself. You know, I believe the greatest political leaders were people like Jesus and Buddha and Krishna, because we need to learn. They weren't afraid to tell the truth. Most politicians don't tell the truth, and in politics, it's always maybe the left or after the right, and right after the left, and the liberals against the. I mean, it's all it's all designed to hate each other and have their own ideology, but politics in general should have a spiritual aspect, and with that spiritual aspect, it embraces everybody regardless of race, color, creed, or religion, and so that should be the political agenda, which is again the main aspect of what's happening now in the beginning of the Aquarian age, which is service to others, and so we need to now start thinking, like you said, on a global basis. These cosmic beings do not address us as Americans, as Russians, as Chinese. They address us as world citizens. They said, you are world citizens. You are responsible for the people of New Guinea as much as you are responsible for the children that you raise. And that's the concept which is, I think, is alien to us at this time. And another thing which I think is very alien is that these people, these cosmic beings, love us unconditionally, which we don't. We don't love unconditionally. We love based on based on our own ideas. So we'll love our own country and we'll love maybe our own religion or our own family. But you know, the cosmic concept is we're all metaphysically connected. And so, you know, a starving child in Yemen is just as close to us as, you know, as a hungry child in America or any other country. And that's the cosmic concept that they're trying to introduce to us. And eventually, with the Aquarian age, over the next centuries to come, this thought, this impression will grow, and eventually this world is going to get better, despite everything that we see around us at this time. So again, the message to the listeners is that have faith, have hope, and send out this power, because as you send out this energy, you'll receive this spiritual energy back. And it's the opposite of a vicious circle. The more you give out, the more you receive back. You can't get something for nothing.
I live that. I live that every day. I've come to learn that without hearing it from you. And I'm so glad you said that. It's my feeling with all my journey to spirit. That's where I wrote my second novel. I've learned that the more you do put out, it's like you're unrolling an antenna that goes out and reaches high up, and the higher that goes, and the more conscious you are of spirit, the more you get. And I think every one of us here on earth have that, except most of us don't use it. I call it a gift. Somebody wrote a book, The Gift. I forgot who it was, but so I call it. But exactly what you said, Wajid.
But Calvin, it's not a gift. It's a natural attribute of man. We are spiritual beings in physical bodies. It's not the other way around. We attract spiritual energy to us and we send it out. We also attract energy to us and we send it out as hate and jealousy. It's the same energy. We just condition it by our thinking. And so what they're saying is, instead of conditioning these energies from the cosmos, these divine energies that flow through us, into us and through us, you know, through our walls and our hate and our jealousy, we've been sending out this dirty, icky, red, black, gray energy out to, to the nature spirits, causing terrible weather conditions, causing famine, causing earthquakes. All this is out. So what they're saying is you're spiritual beings, and so what you need to do, and this is the hope. The cosmic beings, even today, are sending these energies through us individually. They can pick up these energies. We just have to telepathically request them, and they'll be sent through us. Again, coming back to, the solution. The solution is a spiritual one. It's not a religious one. The religions of the world have caused more death and destruction than we can imagine. It's a spiritual solution. And the thing is, the cosmic masters or these higher beings, they don't care if you're a lesbian or a transvestite or whatever, or even a murderer. They don't even care. So long as if you have this wish to send out energy, they say anybody, you don't have to be a saint or somebody, a goody two shoe, or somebody that considers themselves good. They embrace everybody. So everybody has this chance to evolve. And that's what I love about it. They don't, they don't look at you, they look into you. And they say that they pick the kernel of you, and they blow away the chaff. So they recognize that within each individual is an aspect of divinity, is an aspect of good. We're all connected, to whatever created us, call it the divine or whatever. And so, we have our lower selves, our lower thinking, our basic minds. And so by sending these energies out, we can raise our minds and then connect to our higher being, our higher aspects, and become the beings that we were. We regressed. We've involved ourselves terribly. At one point, we were very advanced spiritually in the times of Lemuria and Atlantis. We were extremely evolved, extremely scientifically and spiritually evolved. So we've regressed to pretty much kind of an animalistic, warlike state. And so they recognize the fact that we are in this, again, to what you said, we are living in paradise. This planet, again, most people don't realize, maybe the indigenous tribes do, or a few people, but the cosmic beings have said, Dr. King has said, that this earth is a living, breathing entity, a goddess. She lives. She's not just a piece of rock. And we've been raping her of her resources for millions of years. And how many people have actually thought of giving back to the earth? They've started now, realizing that the earth is changing and the climate changes and all that. But not many people have actually even given thanks to this beautiful goddess that gives us a refuge through space. So all these things are being revealed now in order for what? In order for us to not only change, but be inspired. And by being inspired, again, the call of action today, like you said, is service to others, regardless of who they are. Absolutely.
Perfect. Two more questions, because, by the way, without a doubt, we could go till 3 in the morning. Without a doubt, but which means that you can keep coming back and we can explore. There's so much to explore. And you know, it seems like each time I go through my own revelation, bringing a little biblical term, the more I hang around you, I go through revelations. Two more questions. Can you, we didn't touch on this yet. Can you kind of talk about the Aetherius Society? Background, history, and some of the work you do in North Carolina, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, we don't have a location in North Carolina, but if they go to the website link,
Okay,
we started Zoom meetings. Where on a Tuesday we have a book study of the Nine Freedoms, one of the core teachings of the Aetherius Society. And then on a Wednesday we have a 12 blessings service, a Zoom meeting. So people are welcome to join us. And on top of that, the Aetherius Society has their own online services with the 12 blessings on the website. You know, the Aetherius Society was founded by Dr. George King under the command of the cosmic beings, because they couldn't find any other organization at that time that could handle these tremendous messages. And the core teachings of the Aetherius Society is, again, their motto is from the third freedom in the Nine Freedoms book. The motto is service is the jewel in the rock of attainment. So what they're saying, the core teachings of the Aetherius Society, is that these are not the days to go to ashrams, to go out to to secluded ashrams and spend time away from humanity. These are not the days. In the old days, in order to reach high states of spiritual enlightenment, those, you would retire into a cave, away from mankind, away from the vibes. But the call of action today is you can still evolve, but you have to be in the midst of the smell, the noise, the wars. So the call of action today is to send out spiritual energy as a way of evolving, and the more spiritual energy that we send out, eventually, by the return of that spiritual energy, we ourselves will evolve safely, because in some of these yoga schools, you can raise the power quickly with certain yogic exercises, but if you're not careful, you can actually become disabled or go mad or go in, because you won't be able to handle the power. So they said that's not the way to do it. To do it safely these days is to be in the midst of mankind. The Aetherius Society does regular services. There was equipment and machinery that was invented by Dr. King, where they tune in to the emanations coming from the cosmic beings on their spacecraft, and they beam these through instrumentations Dr. King invented, called the spiritual energy radiator, and these are beamed out to mankind. That's one of his inventions. They have certain other missions. One of them, Operation Sunbeam, where we're giving a token back to the Mother Earth. We have another mission called Operation Prayer Power, where Dr. King invented these spiritual storage batteries that we can, through to Buddhist mantra and Christian prayers, we can actually charge these physical batteries and then use them in cases of war or earthquakes, like the recent earthquake in Syria and Turkey. We released a lot of a lot of these energies at once. It's like in a disaster, you can't get 1,000 people together and send out power. And so Dr. King, being a radionic scientist, invented these storage batteries where regularly we charge them. And in the case of an earthquake or a cyclone or a war, we send it out and it goes out, as a massive spiritual energy, which gives healing to the doctors and the nurses and the rescue people who are there. and there was a tremendous amount of miracles that occurred in Syria and Turkey after the earthquake. People were still being found alive 3, 4, 5, 6 days after the earthquake, where
Wow.
they should have been dead.
Wow.
So this is a result of sending out spiritual energy. And again, the gist of the message is that you don't have to follow the Aetherius Society. It would be good if you became a member of the Aetherius Society. But one thing I want to bring out, in the early 50s, Dr. King was invited to the BBC, where in front of millions he went into yogic somatic trance, and the Master Aetherius spoke to him. And the host asked the Master Aetherius, he says, what message do you have at this time? Now, he didn't say, join the Aetherius Society or follow Dr. King. He said, if you're going to be a Buddhist, be the best Buddhist. If you're going to be a Christian, be the best Christian. If you're going to be a Hindu, be the best Hindu. In other words, they're saying that, go back to the divine teachings of these great masters and go back to service to mankind. So the message, I think, is so simple, Calvin, that it goes over people's head. People believe, the terrestrial thought is, if it's complicated or intellectual, it must mean something. And their message is so simple, that people don't get it.
Simple. It's so simple. That's our problem. Lack of education. We're just not smart, and we don't get what's right in front of us. There'll be all kinds of information for folks to check out the Aetherius Society, and links, and I have one just to kind of lighten this session a little bit, because it's been a little on the heavy side, and I've heard it before, but I always like to hear it again. Just talk about the last thing to ask at this point, and you'll come back, because you do come back, and I love you to come back. Is talk about your experiences climbing Mount Kilimanjaro.
Well, it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, mentally and physically, and probably one of the most rewarding. I think I was closer to God climbing that mountain, because I was nearly half dead. So I was meeting my creator pretty much at the top of the mountain. It was a very arduous climb. I'm very glad that I did it. It's also a very holy mountain, in that it's a retreat of some of the ascended masters of this earth, Kilimanjaro. And below, I'll relate one experience. I was giving healing to one of our team that was climbing, because we suffered a lot of altitude sickness, and all of us suffered from it. It makes you really sick. Messes up your stomach, headaches, and it's just horrible. And I was given a healing, and one of the other guides said, he said, "Are you a priest?" I said, "No." He said, "Well, generally," he said, "a priest would administer healing." And I started talking to him about that anybody can give healing. Dr. King wrote this book called You Too Can Heal, which is a birthright, that every man, woman, child, even animals, can give healing. And then I told him that by the way, this is a holy mountain. And he says, "Yeah, I know." So I asked him how he knew. He said, well, he said one time they were on a climb, and one of the people got lost, and they couldn't find him, and he ended up in this cave. And while he was in this cave, he said this being appeared in front of him and started talking to him in a different language. He didn't understand what he was saying, but mentally, he got the impression that he was going to help him, guide him back down the mountain. But he was too scared to do that. So he stayed there 3 days, and this being stayed with him for 3 days and then the rescue party eventually found him. They don't understand how they found him, but they eventually found him. So it was proof that again, even in that situation, that one of the beings that they live inside the mountain, and they have people talk about what so, in the Disney movie Wakanda, about this race of advanced beings in Africa. Well, Wakanda lives. There is a real Wakanda that is at the bottom of Mount Kilimanjaro, where beings have extremely advanced scientific equipment that monitor mankind. Not only Mount Kilimanjaro, but Mount Shasta is another one.
We talked about that,
Yeah,
about the woman I interviewed who,
yeah, Mount Shasta is another one.
wow,
Castle Peak is another retreat of these people, as well as Ben Macdui in Scotland, the Grand Tetons in Wyoming is another retreat. So these people, these advanced beings, actually live deep under the mountain in these retreats. So again, they monitor and keep an eye on mankind. So that's another story in itself. But Africa is a wonderful continent, and unfortunately, the glaciers actually on one that I saw back in 2006 are because of global warming are actually melting on Kilimanjaro, and they've had fires there recently, which is never heard of.
never
So
heard.
again, that's another sign that things are changing on the planet.
Things are changing. Boy, things are changing. I just interviewed a professor at Cornell, Dr. Michael Hoffman, who wrote a book about the changing menu, that our food is changing dramatically and quickly. So that you mentioned Africa, and most of the chocolate in the world comes from West Africa. And he said, you just said it, Wajid. Climatologically, it's all messed up. We passed the tipping point. There's, they used to talk about a tipping point. If we can stop it and not get there, we'll be able to fix things. We're not going to be able to fix things. We passed it by, and now mankind and its infinite wisdom is not going to try to fix it. We're going to try to find ways to live with it. And I don't want to live in a world without chocolate. Personally, I love my chocolate. Anyway, this has been great. I'm so glad we connected, and just to remind people, what a thoroughly enjoyable read, provocative. I'll have all the information up, and thank you so much for being here. Your passion, your energy, your spirit, your light.
Well, just before I go, I just
Sure.
again I want to reemphasize the hope and not the doom, and that the media, I see the media, it's just doom and gloom all the time. And it's lies. All they do is scan the police reports, and that's supposed to be news. And it's deliberately designed to bring us down. So, we need to ignore the news. I mean, it's okay to be informed of what's happening, but we don't have to let it control our soul. And the hope is that we've never been left alone. These cosmic beings have monitored us for the last 18 million years. They're not going to leave us alone.
Nice.
And there is still hope for planet Earth. They've said that if we cooperate with them, there's hope. And we didn't address the new age that's coming, but there is a new age that is on its way, and nothing can stop it. No Fukushima, no Ukraine, none of this rubbish will stop it. Eventually, all this will die down, and then only those who are ready for this change that's coming, not only to Mother Earth but to mankind, will be allowed to stay. The rest will have to go somewhere else, to another more younger primitive world. So that's the gist of the message, that there is still hope.
Great message.
If we just cooperate.
Great message. Great way to end this session. Thank you so much, Wajid. You illuminate me. And don't leave. I'm going to sign off now. Again, thank you. Come back. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you.